A former royal insider just lobbed a single sugary sentence into the press, and now it's detonating across 2 continents. Because Sarah Ferguson, yes, Fergie, didn't simply comment on Meghan Markle. She implied a past the internet already wanted to believe, wrapped it in Yacht summers, and then stood back while the whole story caught fire. And if Meghan thought she'd buried that chapter for good, it's clawing its way back to the surface. Here's what's going on. Fergie has been on the circuit lately, promoting her newest book, part redemption, part reinvention, the classic "I've been through it and I survived" tour. Normal enough. Until an interviewer decided to ask the question that never stays neutral: Meghan's impact on the monarchy. And according to people in the room, the temperature dropped. Fergie paused. That tiny head tilt, that measured smile. Then she just said, "Oh, Meghan." 2 words. But the way she delivered them sounded less like an answer and more like a warning. Then she went somewhere specific. She started talking about yacht summers, about young women who get dazzled by proximity to royalty, the glitter, the access, the illusion that if you're seen in the right place, with the right people, your life can change overnight. She described those trips like a glossy costume party for the well-connected. Everyone dressing up, everyone networking, everyone hoping someone important is watching. And then she dropped the line that lit the match. She said some of those faces ended up in very unexpected places, including Buckingham Palace. That's all it took. Because the internet doesn't need a confession. It needs an implication it can drag through a million group chats. Within hours, people were dredging up an old, infamous party circuit from the early 2000s, the kind of yacht trip mythology that never really dies. Models, money, Hollywood wannabes, billionaires, Mediterranean ports like Greece and Monaco, and, allegedly, a very young Meghan Markle somewhere in that orbit, with Prince Andrew's name floating nearby like gasoline fumes. No one outright said, "This happened," not in a way that would stand up in court anyway. But the suggestion was more powerful than a statement. Because what Fergie effectively did, whether intentionally or not, was yank Meghan back toward the yacht girl narrative Meghan's camp has been desperate to erase since she became a duchess. That phrase alone carries a whole cultural implication: networking, attention chasing, transactional proximity to power. And once it's in the air, it sticks to everything. Then came the paparazzi moment, because of course it did. The next day, reporters cornered Fergie and asked her point blank about Meghan and those so-called yacht summers. And Fergie didn't panic. She didn't deny. She didn't clarify. She smirked. "Oh, darling," she said. "I don't tell tales. I just remind people that every fairy tale starts somewhere." That's not a denial. That's a dagger with lipstick on it. And it sent the whole thing into overdrive. Because now you've got 3 separate crises exploding at once. The palace trying to project stability, Meghan trying to keep her brand polished, and Fergie casually tossing riddles into the media like she's feeding pigeons. According to one royal aide quoted in the press, the timing couldn't have been worse. The family's been pushing a unity and healing storyline, careful, controlled, image managed. And then Fergie strolls in and turns it into a cliffhanger. So the real question becomes, why would she do this? Why would Sarah Ferguson, someone who survived her own public humiliations, risk sparking yet another royal scandal? Because the whispers say this isn't random. It's personal. Apparently, there's been bad blood simmering between them for years. The story that keeps circulating is that Fergie felt disrespected early on, like Meghan didn't treat her with the deference Fergie believed she'd earned, or like Meghan wrote her off as irrelevant. And then there's the moment people still bring up: Princess Eugenie's wedding. The claim is that Meghan's pregnancy news ended up dominating headlines around Eugenie's big day, and Fergie, Eugenie's mother, didn't forgive it. One insider described it as classic Meghan, turning someone else's milestone into her own spotlight. Whether that's fair or not doesn't even matter at this point, because in a feud like this, perception is the currency. And if Fergie believes she was slighted, this is exactly the kind of revenge that doesn't leave fingerprints. You don't accuse, you insinuate, you let strangers do the dirty work for you. Meanwhile, Meghan's side is in pure crisis mode, because it's one thing to handle tabloid noise. It's another thing when Prince Andrew's name gets linked, even indirectly, to yours in the same sentence. No serious brand strategist wants that association hanging around, even as rumor, even as innuendo, even as people are talking. So Meghan's PR operation goes into triage, scrubbing old blog posts, disappearing photos, trying to plug a leak with a bucket. But the internet doesn't forget, it duplicates. And then the secondary problem hits: silence. Meghan goes quiet online. No confident clapbacks, no glossy updates, no carefully curated calm, just nothing. And when someone whose entire public identity is narrative control suddenly goes dark, it doesn't read as peace. It reads as planning. Word is she's locked into crisis meetings, pacing, furious, firing off messages, demanding solutions. One version of the story claims she snapped something like, "After everything I've done for that family." You can practically hear the indignation. But here's what makes Meghan dangerous in this kind of fight. She understands media the way royals understand protocol. She doesn't just react, she counter-programs. So instead of letting Fergie define the story, Meghan's team starts building what they're calling a counter-narrative, an attempt to seize back the headlines and reframe everything as misogyny, smears, and strategic character assassination. And if you know Meghan's playbook, you know she won't aim small. Rumor has it she reached out to a major streaming executive, not for a casual sit-down, for something framed as a reclamation, truth, womanhood, survival. This is what really happened, not a clapback, a rebrand. But the moment Meghan starts moving, Fergie gives the impression she's still holding cards. Her camp begins hinting, subtly, conveniently, that she could clear up a lot about the early days, that she knows things, that she's heard things, that she's seen how the sausage gets made. In royal terms, that's a threat with a smile. And it's terrifying for Meghan, because Meghan has spent years trying to bury the pre-Duchess version of herself beneath a clean, modern myth. Soft neutrals, compassion language, California serenity, the polished image of a woman who rose above it all. But you can't curate your way out of an allegation once the audience decides it's entertaining. Then the comparisons start, because the tabloids always pick sides. They paint Fergie as the Duchess who endured, the one who stayed, the one who took her punishment and didn't burn the house down on the way out. And Meghan becomes the Duchess who left, who fought, who challenged the institution, who keeps demanding the microphone. Stayed versus strayed. It's brutal, and it's effective. Then the photos start appearing, old party images, private events, glamorous shots pulled from context and reposted like proof. The internet doesn't care if the story is fair, it cares if the story is addictive. Harry, reportedly, is livid. He wants to protect her, but every move they make seems to trigger another wave. He's convinced the family has closed ranks, that Meghan is once again being positioned as the outsider, and that the machine is doing what it always does when threatened. But Meghan isn't shrinking. She's seen smiling outside a women's leadership luncheon, calm and composed, looking like she's floating above the chaos. And that smile is doing double duty. It tells cameras she's unbothered, and it warns everyone else she's not done. Behind closed doors, though, the message is supposedly sharper. Every time they come for her, she comes back stronger. And to be fair, she's built an entire brand on that idea. Resilience, reinvention, refusal to be shamed. But even resilient people crack when the narrative gets away from them. While Meghan prepares her next move, Fergie keeps doing what she does best: plausible deniability dressed up as charm. She goes on friendly daytime shows. She tells stories that are vague enough to avoid legal trouble but pointed enough to land. She mentions royal newcomers who wanted crowns before they earned them. She talks about ambition, impatience, entitlement, never saying Meghan's name while ensuring everyone hears it anyway. And suddenly the internet is treating this like a sporting event. Team Fergie starts trending. A Duchess versus Duchess storyline racks up millions of posts. And Meghan's biggest problem becomes obvious. She's no longer framed as the victim. She's being framed as the aggressor, the manipulator, the person who always wants the spotlight, no matter whose day it is. So Meghan makes a decision that shocks people who expected her to stay quiet until the storm passed. She wants to speak on camera, not as a casual guest, not tucked inside a podcast episode, not in a soft focus profile. Something bigger. A tell-all conversation framed as truth-telling and reclamation. A carefully staged moment designed to silence whispers by making her humanity impossible to ignore. But in royal warfare, silence has power. And so does timing. Because the second Meghan starts planning her big truth moment, something else happens. Fergie's allies begin talking. Old acquaintances, former staff, people who remember the early days when Meghan first entered the royal orbit, and their stories, at least the ones being teased, aren't flattering. So what began as one cryptic anecdote in a book interview spirals into an all-out media war. Two duchesses, two survival strategies, and a monarchy caught in the middle trying not to look like it's bleeding. And now the question isn't even who's right. It's who outlasts the story. Because Fergie has already survived public humiliation, scandal, and exile. She learned how to take hits and keep smiling. Meghan is still learning something the royals understand in their bones. When you fight the crown doesn't just fight back. It fights back smarter. And here's the part people keep missing. This isn't only about yacht rumors or snide remarks. It's about power, about narrative ownership, about who gets to be believed first. Those whispers from Fergie's side, they don't have to be proven. They just have to land before Meghan speaks. Undermine her credibility early. Seed doubt. Let the audience do the rest. It's an old play, a classic PR move. Define your opponent before they can define themselves. And it works because there's already a segment of the public primed to doubt Meghan. They see her as a Hollywood outsider who tried to modernize a centuries-old institution and then left when the cost got too high. Fair or unfair, that suspicion is fuel. Meghan knows it. That's why she's going for the jugular with a major on-camera moment. Not because she loves attention, because she needs control. She needs emotional connection. She needs people to feel like they understand her, not just speculate about her. But that's the trap, because the royal machine is built to outlast emotion. It's trained to wait out tears, scandals, trends, and outrage cycles. It can spin, deflect, leak, and deny for years without blinking. Meghan's fighting an institution that has survived centuries of controversy, and she's doing it while the internet treats her life like episodic entertainment. So what happens next? If Meghan goes forward, it's going to be explosive. Because it has to be. She'll need revelations strong enough to drown out the insinuations. And the palace, directly or indirectly, will respond. More leaks, more sources, more stories designed to muddy her message until nothing feels certain. It's going to get uglier before it gets clearer. And in the end, there may not be a winner. Just a pile of burned reputations and a monarchy that looks more fragile than it wants to admit. But one thing is obvious. This scandal isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. Meghan already cracked open the idea that royal narratives can be challenged. This latest firestorm is pouring oxygen on that shift. And Fergie? She's watching it unfold like someone who knows exactly how the game is played, how to throw a match and never be the one holding the lighter. Maybe she's using Meghan as a pawn. Maybe Meghan sees it and doesn't care because she'd rather win the war than protect her peace. Either way, the spectacle is growing, and it's not going to stay contained. Because once stories like this start feeding themselves, they don't end with an apology. They end when the audience gets bored, or when someone finally drops something undeniable. So yes, strap in. If Meghan speaks, the retaliation will be ruthless. If she doesn't, the whispers will get louder. And either way, this fight is only getting started. And here's the final twist, because it's the part that makes this whole thing feel less like gossip and more like a warning shot. If Fergie truly is sitting on receipts, she doesn't even need to release them. She only has to convince people she could. That possibility alone keeps Meghan frozen between two bad options. Speak and trigger a bigger counterattack, or stay silent and let the implication harden into truth through repetition. And that's how these stories become permanent, not through proof, but through pressure, timing, and the fear that the next leak will be the one you can't survive.